Okay, so hi everyone. My name is Kennel Yu. I'm a CFP, and today we're going to talk about the budgeting, and I call it a boundary setting exercise. So a little bit about myself. I'm a ex-banker, ex-corporate employee. I've been with the retail banking and corporate uh, financial planning industry for over 9 years. I have a little bit different take on that industry. I want to help students, families, and couples um, create a solid financial plan. And so if you have any inquiries about your current situation, you feel you're not getting the personalized service that you're looking for, feel free to give me a shout at kenneld@teleioswealth.ca. That's kenneld@teleioswealth.ca. Or you can also follow me on Instagram at Teleios Wealth or at Young Dad Finance for more resources. And of course, the YouTube channel. If you search my name, you'll be able to find myself there. So a lot of my clients, the first thing we talk about is budgeting. I think budgeting is a very important part of any financial plan. And I believe this part of the plan is not talked about enough at the banks. I remember when I was a financial planner there, all we talked about were mutual funds, investment returns. How can I make this money go from 100,000 to 200,000 overnight? We never talk about the why. We never talk about kind of what is the money coming in and what is the money going out. A lot of times, because we have a sales culture, we tend to focus on a lot of the let's go and get product, let's get mutual funds, let's go sell, sell, sell. So today I'm going to slow it all down. And go back to the basics of what a financial planner would be doing, and that is to set a budget. So a lot of times, you see here, I have a young son, and boundaries. You think, setting, they're in a crib. A lot of times you're like, oh, from the outside looking in, you think, oh my goodness, there's a lot of limitations. There's a lot of things where you're limited. You cannot reach out. You feel stuck because you're surrounded by these bars and you cannot get out. But as a parent, why do you put a baby in a crib? It's actually to protect them. And so boundaries, depending on your point of view, could be a good thing or a bad thing. For the person that's in the crib, it might be a bad thing because my little one, after he got to a certain age, he wants to climb out of it. He thinks he's independent. He thinks he can, he can be on his bed. But as a parent, we all know that that's not the case. We were worried that they were going to fall off the bed when they're sleeping, roll off, get hurt. And so similarly, as we kind of go through this presentation today, I want you to kind of to remember that the boundaries, although they may seem limiting, they may seem like you're putting brakes on everything and it's stopping you, and you may feel stuck by setting boundaries. It's actually a good thing to have boundaries. It's there to protect you, and it's there to save you from potentially a financial disaster. So I want to talk about two things, the difference between needs and wants. So a need is what I defined as something that is essential, that without it you will die. So I would say things like water. The recommended amount of water you want to drink is 8 cups a day. Shelter. Without shelter, with the rain that's going on in Vancouver right now, it'll be wet. It's cold. You can get sick. You can feel not secure because you can get attacked. So I would classify shelter as being a need, and also food. You can probably not eat for a couple of days, but you'll be weak and you'll be able to do things. So all three of these things I would classify as a need. You would need these things to kind of continue on in life and kind of have a next day, right? Without it, you could potentially die in a couple of days. But the difference is a want. So a want is something that it can sometimes you may feel you need it, but actually it's what I classify as a luxury, or something that you think you need, but if you kind of stop yourself, you be still and you think about it, you actually might not need it. You can actually survive without it. So example, I would say is bubble tea. Everyone thinks they need bubble tea, right? You have that image of people, putting the IV of bubble tea into your system, right? I love bubble tea, but it's not a need. It's a want, right? It's something I would like to have, a coffee or tea, that cup from Starbucks. A lot of people think it's a need, but actually I would classify that more as a want, as something, it's desirable, but somehow we made it a need, but I would classify again as a want. In terms of a shelter, a mansion, right? People are like, I want to live in a mansion. I want to live in a big place. I need it. I need it. I need it to show it to my friends. I need it for, my family of, 2, 3 kids. I need them to have a yard to run around. Although it may sound like a need, again, I believe, if you have a roof over your head, you've covered your need for a shelter. A mansion might be a bit excessive, but again, some people may classify that, I would say incorrectly as a need, but I would, in this case, classify it as a want. And finally, in terms of food, a want I would say is like a 5-star Michelin restaurant, right? Fine dining at a really fancy restaurant. Some people again think they need it. It's like, oh, I love the food, I love the good taste. I really need it to live another day. But again, I would classify that as a want versus a need, which is basic groceries. Cook yourself a good meal, simple meal, and kind of get on with your day. So hopefully that clarifies kind of what I would define as needs and wants. And normally, when we run over budget, it's usually the wants, kind of get, we don't set the proper boundaries around our wants, which lead to overspending, and then which leads to kind of us being cash flow negative, which I will kind of talk about a little bit later. So the concept of values, I think a lot of times, a lot of people don't really slow down and think about what is it that they value. And I remember once I heard someone very wise tell me that if you have that's the hardest part, to really know, to figure yourself what maybe the top 5 values that you have. And on this screen I have it. Respect, is it teamwork, honesty, um, all those different things, all these core values that you hold, integrity. A lot of times it takes a lot of work to kind of define what values are. Like for myself, my values are integrity. My values are being supportive. My values are being generous. And a lot of times when one doesn't live by their values, that's when you lose a lot of your confidence, because you're not in living in your authentic self. You're not being true to yourself. And that's really what the challenge nowadays a lot of people face, is they don't know what their values are. And so it's a moving target. It's like, oh, I want all these things, and it gets all confusing. But a proper budget really starts with defining what your values are. And really, when you look at your spending, if you kind of just look at your bills every month, it tells you a lot about what you value. So for instance, I value generosity. So, you will see tithing as part of my, regular practice. I'm going to be running a half marathon quite soon. And, I'm running for a cause this time because I want to give back, to a hospital that I believe in. I believe in giving of my time. So I mentor students. And on the pocketbook, on again on the statements, you'll see in terms of values, like I really like bubble tea. So you'll probably see an item on my Visa card statement for bubble tea. And so if you kind of are stuck on what your values are, and kind of like what you value the most, a good practice or a good kind of exercise to do is look through your bank statements, look through your credit card statements, and see where all your items are going to. And chances are where those items are going to are kind of where your values lie. And again, I work with my clients to kind of figure out what those are. And everyone's values are different, so very, very hard to kind of dive deep into it. But for the purpose of this presentation, I want you guys to understand the values and the importance of defining those values. And there's a lot of exercises. If you kind of Google, how to define my own values, there's a list of them. You can kind of, again, it'll probably take you an hour or two, and not overnight, but kind of as you journal, as you think about it, they will kind of come to you, and you can't rush them, because they take a bit of digging. It's kind of like finding treasure. But once you get very clear on what your values are, life becomes a lot easier, I feel. And so this brings us kind of to the next point, which is income versus expenses. Based on based on kind of your values and what you find valuable, I think again, my psychologist once told me, he's like, Kendall, don't worry about money, because if you create something valuable, the money will come. And I thought about that. I'm like, huh. So if I create something of value, so people will pay me for it. And so I was struggling a lot. I'm like, what is it that I can create a value that people will pay for? And kind of as I kind of dug deep and through my life, and that's why I kind of started my practice. I'm like, hey, I've loved helping students. I love helping couples, and I love helping young families, because me myself, I'm a dad and a husband with a young family, and finances always come up. It creates a lot of friction. You read a lot of articles that is probably the top three reasons why people divorce is, they have money issues, right? Like, because again, money issues usually tie back to what the values are, because, a husband spends money in this area, but wife spends money in this area, and then they clash because they actually value different things. And so it's very, very clear to kind of know what your values are, and if you have a significant other, know what their values are. And then, when you're in a family, in a committed relationship, to know what kind of the couple's values are, because that really defines, will help define and clarify a lot of the spending priorities, and a lot of, how to generate, your income. So different sources of income would be your salary, dividends if you buy kind of like bank stocks, or telecommunication stocks, and every 3 months, if they make profits, they'll pay you back for believing in them and trusting them with your money. There's, in Vancouver, all about the real estate, so rental income is definitely a source of income. Capital gains, if buy a share for $1,000, you sell it for 2,000, you get that gain. That's also counted as income. And also gifts, right? So inheritance, you may have, a birthday gift. Parents may gift you, money when you go to school. Those are all different sources of income. And as we enter into kind of the gig economy, right? A lot of people have side hustles. So they contract work out. They do all these different things in order to generate the income. Expenses are the things that kind of go out, right? Income is coming in, expenses are the things that go out. So expenses will include housing costs, which is probably 40 to 50%, if not more, of someone's income source will go to that. Food and entertainment, as borders are opening up, and things are opening up in the economy, you want to spend on a nice restaurant, you want to go back to the theaters, you want to go to parks and all these different things. And groceries, with inflation being at 5%, chances are a good portion of your income is going to pay those expenses. So knowing and defining what these income sources are, and expenses, kind of different accounts that it goes to, really help clarify what the different things, what the different things, like where your money is coming in and where it's going out, will really help you clarify kind of what your values are, and kind of where your money is going to. And so a lot of times people don't spend that time, right? To define what their values are, to really look at kind of what are the sources of money coming in, and what are the sources of money going out. And so a lot of times, that's the first exercise I do with all my clients, and it's always a aha moment for them, because they kind of look at it and they go like, oh wow, I didn't know that I spent X amount of dollars on this thing. I didn't think I valued it, but I guess my money speaks otherwise. Or they think, for instance, like income wise, they think they don't make a lot of money, but then when they pull out all the different resources, it's like it's just hidden in different ways, right? There's savings, all these different things, and once you kind of put it on a sheet of paper, on an Excel, it actually helps. So again, back to the concept of cash flow positive or cash flow negative. So your cash flow positive when your income is greater than your expenses. So that's usually a good thing. That's usually when you can save, put away for a rainy day. You can, spend a little bit extra on a restaurant meal, or an entertainment. So, you want to try to be cash flow positive as much as possible. Where we run into problem is when our expenses are higher than our income. And that's when, all the debts come in, right? Borrow from the line of credit, borrow from your credit card, borrow from your home equity line of credit to pay for expenses, and usually that happens because you believe that I'm going to make more money down the road, and so I'm going to spend now and pay later, and that's when people usually run into problems because there's a cost to that, right? Banks charge interest on any sort of money that you borrow. And so a lot of times people just pay the minimum payment, which most of the time will go to interest. And so that money that they borrow to use never gets paid down. And then you'll see, a lot of your expenses is actually gone to financing the debt. And that's really hard to get ahead, right? That's when you kind of are slave to the debt, right? You have to pay your interest, pay your mortgage, pay all these different things. And chances are sometimes people get stuck in their jobs because even though they may not like the job or they don't feel it's their calling, they keep doing it because it pays well and it does well for them. And so they kind of get into this cycle of they work for money, not work for a purpose that perhaps they're called to do. And so hopefully with kind of my exercises that I would do my clients, I help them gain that clarity, right, of values, clarity of where their income is coming from, and clarity of where their expenses are coming from. And I know when my wife and I sat down with my pastor, he was kind of doing marriage counseling with us. But then he actually also became my financial planner, which was a bit humbling to be completely honest, because I'm a financial planner by trade. But my pastor, by the grace of God, through his wisdom, kind of did this exercise with us. Was like, what are your sources of income? What are your expenses? And he's like, do you have a budget? I'm like, yeah. He's like, do you keep track of it on a monthly basis? I'm like, no. He's like, okay, let's kind of revisit, right? So because I have a document, but I never use it because I was so scared of what it tells me, right? It tells me that I was always like cash flow negative. And I felt stuck and I felt I wasn't good enough. But really, if you kind of look at the budget, it's like I said, going back to the first image, right, of boundary setting, of this thing, a budget. At first, I saw it as a very limiting factor, as it's telling me not to spend on things and not to buy things and to cut expenses. Not at all, right? A budget is there to kind of protect you from financial instability. It's there to kind of give you light on where your spending is happening and where you can kind of do it better. And so that abundance mindset, that growth mindset of, okay, if you kind of start tracking your expenses of where money is going, it might not look pretty the first couple of times, but as you kind of be more aware and you're being more cognizant of it, there is hope. There is hope to have a better budget. There is hope to be cash flow positive. But the worst case is to be not aware and to kind of hide it under the rug. And so with that, that's kind of my workshop today. My lesson today is on this budgeting and that mindset of setting clear boundaries of where your mining or where your money goes, and being a kind of a good steward for the finances that you have. So I'll open the floor to questions, and I guess I'll yeah, if you want to ask, and if not, I can stop the recording, and kind of go from there. Any questions for kind of the general public? I'll stop the screen share so you can see me, and you can feel free to type it in the chat box or ask away. So if not, if there's no questions, that is completely okay. Thank you again for joining me in another week of the Teleios Wealth Academy. Every Thursday night at 8 o'clock, I will be doing these sessions live. If you can't make it, not to worry. Usually by next week, Monday, I'll have a replay going. But like I said to all the people that come, usually we'll have a question and answer period after the fact. And you can stay to ask kind of more personalized questions. I have the time booked from 8 to 9 o'clock. So it's almost like a free session. So if you can make it, I appreciate the live audience. and appreciate your time. And yeah, we'll see you again next Thursday at 8 o'clock for another webinar. Topic to be determined. And also on YouTube, follow me on we have Teleios Tuesdays. So every Tuesday we'll talk about something regarding savings. It could be regarding parenting hacks, study habits, and money management. So every week will be a different category, different topic. It'll be one of those topics. So it kind of goes on a weekly basis. So check it out. Follow me, and hope to see you soon. Thanks, everyone.